There is a moment, somewhere around the 2-hour mark of Goodfellas, when Henry Hill is standing in his own kitchen trying to stir a pot of red sauce, while a helicopter circles overhead and his entire life starts coming apart in real time. The film around him is also coming apart. The cuts get faster, the music keeps interrupting itself, the camera stops floating and starts shaking. For 10 straight minutes, the movie itself has a nervous breakdown right alongside its main character. Almost nobody talks about why. Most people remember Goodfellas as the great gangster movie, the fun one, the one with the long copa shot and the funny how scene and the wads of cash. That memory is not wrong, it is just shallow. Underneath the rush, Scorsese was building something quieter, sadder, and more careful than a gangster movie. He was building a tragedy in the oldest sense of the word, and almost nobody noticed because the tragedy was hiding inside the seduction. Section 1. As far back as I can remember, how the first 40 seconds tell you it's already over. The car is parked on a dark road somewhere in upstate New York. There is a noise from the trunk, a thumping. Something alive in there that should not be alive anymore. 3 men get out of the car. One of them is Henry Hill. One of them is Jimmy Conway. One of them is Tommy DeVito. They open the trunk and there is a man wrapped in a bloody white sheet, still moving, still groaning. Tommy stabs him. Jimmy shoots him. Henry watches. Then Henry walks back to the front of the car, slams the trunk shut, and stares straight at us. The frame freezes on his face, and his voice comes in over the silence and says the most famous sentence in the movie. As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. That is the first 40 seconds of Goodfellas. And if you watch it carefully, the whole tragedy is already there. Every single piece of it. The film has not even officially started yet, and Scorsese has already shown you the ending. Most people do not notice this on a first watch. They notice the energy, the violence, the line. They feel the rush of the opening credits exploding in with Tony Bennett singing Rags to Riches. That big, celebratory sweep of music that makes the whole thing feel like a party kicking off. What they do not feel, until much later, is the weight of what they just saw. Because here is what just happened. Before you knew anything about Henry, before you saw him as a kid watching the cab stand from his window, before you watched him fall in love, or get rich, or start sweating over helicopters, before any of that, Scorsese put you in a car with him. Scorsese made you watch him stand by while a man was murdered in a trunk on the side of the road. And then Scorsese paused the movie, froze the picture, and let Henry tell you, with the brightest possible voice in the world, that this is what he always wanted. Read that sentence again with the trunk in mind. As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. He is saying this directly after a stabbing. He is saying it on the side of a road where a body has just gone still. And he is saying it with a kind of pride. A kind of warmth even, like he is sharing a happy childhood memory. That is not a beginning. That is an ending dressed up as a beginning. The film is showing you, in its very first move, that Henry never stops being the man in that trunk scene. That this is who he is. That every flashback you are about to see, every memory of his pretty wife and his big nights at the Copa and his fast money and his good times, every single one of those memories is being narrated by the same man who watched a guy bleed out and then smiled about getting to be a gangster. The whole rise of Henry Hill is being told to you by the man at the end of his own collapse. Once you see it that way, the whole film changes shape. Scorsese did not just stumble into this opening. He fought for it. He and Nicholas Pileggi, the writer who knew the real Henry Hill and had written the book the movie is based on, went through 12 drafts of the script trying to figure out where to start the story. The book starts at the beginning. The book walks you through Henry's life in order, the way a normal book does. Scorsese did not want that. Scorsese said in interviews many times that he wanted the movie to start like a gunshot. He wanted to take the gangster movie and break it. He wanted to come in the middle and move backwards and forwards. He wanted to put the worst thing first. The worst thing is the trunk. So that is where the movie begins. This was not a wild creative guess. Scorsese has talked about where he learned to do this. He has pointed at a film called Jules and Jim by a French director named Truffaut. In that movie, Truffaut would freeze the picture and have a narrator tell you something while the image sat still. Scorsese loved that. He loved how the frozen image could say one thing while the words on top of it said something else, and how the gap between the two could mean more than either of them on their own. That is exactly what is happening in those opening 40 seconds of Goodfellas. The frozen image is Henry's face on the side of a road after watching murder. The words on top are Henry, much older, telling you he always wanted this. The gap between those two things is the whole movie. The whole tragedy. The whole sad truth that what Henry thought he wanted and what he actually got were the same thing, and that he never figured out the difference. There is something else worth knowing about that frozen image. In a normal movie, when the picture freezes, it usually means a moment is special, a win, a triumph, a coming of age, a team raising a trophy, a hero looking at the sunset. The freeze frame is a victory pose. Scorsese took that idea and turned it inside out. In Goodfellas, the picture freezes when something true is happening underneath the surface. The picture freezes on Henry as a small boy after his father has finished beating him. The picture freezes later, at other turning points, where Henry is being shown something he does not want to admit. The freeze is not a victory. It is a moment of being caught. Time stops because the truth has arrived, and the movie wants you to sit in it. When the picture freezes on Henry's face after the trunk killing, that is the truth arriving. The truth is that he is in this now. There is no going back. He has helped kill a man on the side of a road. The freeze holds him there. And while it holds him there, his older voice comes in to give you the line that the rest of the movie is going to spend almost 2.5 hours testing. As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. Now think about what that line is doing. It is a confession, but the confessor sounds proud. It is a regret, but the regretter is smiling. Henry is telling you, from somewhere in the future, that he wanted this his whole life. The movie has given you no information yet about who Henry is, where he came from, what he means by gangster. He has not told you about his neighborhood. He has not told you about his mother and father. He has not told you about Polly or Jimmy or Tommy or Karen. He has just told you that he wanted this, that he always wanted this. And the first thing he is going to show you he wanted is a man dying in the trunk of his own car. That is the deal the movie is making with you. The deal is, Henry is going to walk you through his life and show you why he loved it. He is going to make it look beautiful. He is going to make you feel the rush of what he felt. And by the time the movie is over, you are going to have to sit with the fact that the rush he is describing led to that trunk scene, and to the freeze frame, and to the man behind the freeze frame who is telling this story from somewhere far away from where he started. People who watch Goodfellas the first time often miss this. They get caught up in the energy. They get caught up in the music and the laughs and Pesci doing his thing. They walk out of the movie thinking it was a fun ride about a guy who lived a wild life and ended up testifying. That reading is not wrong, exactly, but it is shallow. It is missing the trick the film played in its first 40 seconds. The trick is that the rise was always being narrated from inside the fall. Every glamorous shot of the good life is being told to you by a man who has already lost it. Every fun memory is being remembered by a man whose memories are now the only thing he has left. That is what the freeze frame is for. The freeze frame is the gap between the man who is doing the thing and the man who is remembering doing the thing. And the man remembering is sadder than he is willing to admit, even to himself. Tony Bennett's Rags to Riches comes in right after the freeze frame breaks. The credits play in big, bold letters. The song is a love song about getting lifted up out of nothing into something glorious. It is loud and proud and full of horns. And it lands, on the soundtrack, less than 10 seconds after a man got stabbed and shot in a trunk. That is the same trick again. The image and the sound are saying two different things. The image just told you what this life actually is. The song is now telling you what Henry felt about it. The whole rest of the movie lives in that gap. There is a small detail that matters here too. The body in the trunk is a man named Billy Batts. He is a made man, which means he is part of the protected inner circle of one of the mafia families. Killing a made man without permission is the worst thing a guy in this world can do. It sets off a chain reaction that will not stop until everyone responsible is dead. So when Scorsese opens the movie with that murder, he is not just opening with a violent moment. He is opening with the original sin of the entire story. Tommy will eventually be killed because of this. Jimmy will eventually start killing everyone connected to a different crime because of how exposed Billy Batts has made him. Henry will eventually have to choose between being murdered and becoming a witness because of the world this killing created. Every collapse in the second half of the movie traces back to that trunk on that road. And yet, on a first watch, you do not know any of that. You just see three guys, one body, and a freeze frame. The film is asking you to trust it. It is saying, I am going to show you something now that will not make sense for 2 hours. Stay with me. Keep watching. Hold on to that face. Hold on to that line. Because by the time we get back here, you are going to understand what the freeze frame was really about. This is unusual filmmaking. Most movies do not assume the audience will remember a single image from the first minute and use it as the key to the whole story. Most movies hold the audience's hand. They explain things twice. They tell you who the bad guy is and who the good guy is. They give you a reason to root for somebody. Goodfellas does none of that. It assumes you are paying attention. It assumes you can hold a contradiction in your head. It assumes you can feel the warmth of Henry's voice and the cold of the body in the trunk at the same time, and not need the movie to choose between them. That is also why the movie is a tragedy and not a gangster movie in the usual sense. A gangster movie picks a side. It either cheers for the criminal as a kind of folk hero, or it punishes him as a kind of warning. Goodfellas does neither. It puts you inside Henry's head from the first second, and then it makes you live with what is in there. You are not invited to judge him. You are not invited to admire him. You are invited to feel what he feels, and then look at what he is doing while he feels it. The freeze frame is the proof. The line is the proof. The trunk is the proof. All three of those things are happening at once, and the movie refuses to tell you which one to believe. That refusal is the thing that makes Goodfellas a tragedy. A tragedy is not a story where the hero dies. A tragedy is a story where the hero gets exactly what he wanted and discovers, too late, what wanting it cost him. By the end of the movie, Henry will still be alive. He will not die in a hail of bullets. He will not be hauled off in handcuffs. He will be standing on a suburban lawn in a bathrobe, complaining about egg noodles and ketchup. And he will be miserable in a way the movie makes you sit with for a long time. The first 40 seconds already know that. The first 40 seconds are pointing at it. The freeze frame is holding it for you. The man whose voice you are hearing has already made every choice that is going to ruin him. He is not telling you about decisions he has yet to make. He is telling you about decisions he has already made and lived with for a long time. And the way his voice sounds when he tells you about them, proud, warm, almost bragging, is itself the saddest part. He still does not see what was wrong with any of it. He is still defending his life to you from inside the wreckage of it. That is why the opening works the way it works. That is why Scorsese put it where he put it. That is why the freeze frame is the first real shot of the film and not the last. The whole movie is going to spend the next 2.5 hours filling in the space between the man on the road with the trunk and the older man telling the story. And the joke of it, the cruel joke at the heart of the entire film, is that those two men are going to turn out to be the same man. And he is never going to know it. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But before any of this collapses, before the murders and the cocaine and the helicopter and the courtroom, there is a small boy across the street from a cab stand in Brooklyn, watching grown men park their cars in front of fire hydrants. And he is making a decision about what kind of man he wants to grow up to be. The trunk is years away from him. The freeze frame is decades away. And yet, somehow, the choice he is about to make as a child is already pointing at both. Section 2. The cab stand. The original sin is already a choice. The boy is across the street, and he is watching. That is the image that opens Henry's real story, not the trunk. The trunk came first in the movie's order. But in the order of Henry's life, the cab stand came first. A small, half-Irish, half-Sicilian kid named Henry Hill is sitting at the window of his family's apartment in Brownsville, Brooklyn, in the year 1955. And he is watching the men across the street. The men work out of a cab stand. The cab stand is a front. The men are not really running cabs. They are running a small piece of a much larger world that the boy at the window does not yet understand. What he understands is that the men are loud. They are smiling. They double park their cars in front of fire hydrants. They hand each other rolls of cash like it means nothing. And nobody on the block ever tells them no. He is 12 years old, and he has already decided. The voiceover that runs over those early scenes is one of the most quoted parts of the whole movie. To me, being a gangster was better than being president of the United States. Even before I first wandered into the cab stand for an after-school job, I knew I wanted to be a part of them. It meant being somebody in a neighborhood that was full of nobodies. They weren't like anybody else. They did whatever they wanted. They double parked in front of a hydrant, and nobody ever gave them a ticket. Read that again, slowly. The boy is not saying he wanted to be rich. He is not saying he wanted to be powerful. He is not even really saying he wanted to be feared. He is saying he wanted to be a somebody. He is saying that the world he was born into was a world full of nobodies, and he could see, from his window, a small group of men who had figured out how to opt out of that. They had figured out how to live without rules. They had figured out how to make the regular people who follow the regular rules look like fools. That is the choice. That is the original sin of the whole movie. It does not happen at the trunk. It does not happen during the Lufthansa heist. It does not happen at the Copa or in the cocaine years or in the courtroom. It happens at a window in Brooklyn when a 12-year-old boy looks across a street and decides that the people obeying the law are the suckers and the people breaking it are the kings. Everything Henry does for the next 30 years is just the working out of that one decision. Every crime, every betrayal, every drug deal, every moment of standing by while somebody got beaten or killed, all of it traces back to a kid at a window who looked at his own life, looked at the life of the men across the street, and quietly chose theirs. Scorsese knows this. The movie knows this. That is why the cab stand sequence is given so much room. It is not a quick prologue. It is not a montage that gets you up to speed. The film slows down for it. The film lingers on it. The film treats it with the same seriousness it treats the murders and the heists, because it is the most important crime in the whole story, even though it is technically not a crime at all. The crime is the wanting. The wanting comes first. The wanting is what makes the rest possible. The world Henry is choosing to leave behind is not a wealthy one. The Hill family lives in a small, crowded apartment. Henry has 6 brothers and sisters. His father is an electrician who came over from Ireland and works long, hard, honest hours for not very much money. His mother is from Sicily. The family is not poor in the desperate sense, but they are tight. Money is tight. Space is tight. Patience is tight. Henry's father is a man who is exhausted by his own life, and that exhaustion comes out as anger, and the anger comes out on his children. There is a scene early in the film where Henry's father finds out that his son has been skipping school to hang around the cab stand. The father loses it. He grabs Henry by the arm and beats him with a belt. The film does not look away. The shot is held. The camera does not turn it into something pretty or cinematic. The beating is shown plainly, almost coldly. The picture freezes on a moment in the middle of it. This is one of the most important shots in the whole movie, and most people forget it 5 minutes after watching it. The freeze frame on the beating is the same kind of freeze frame Scorsese used at the trunk. It is the freeze that says, "Look at this. This matters. This is the truth arriving." And the truth arriving in this moment is that Henry's home life is, in its own way, more violent and more frightening than the world of the cab stand. The cab stand men have never hit Henry. The cab stand men give him jobs and pay him in cash and laugh at his jokes. The cab stand men are warm. His own father is the one with the belt. His own father is the one who hurts him. That is the calculation a 12-year-old is making in his head when he chooses the cab stand over school, the cab stand over home, the cab stand over the life his parents are trying to give him. The cab stand is not the dangerous place. The cab stand is the safe place. Home is the dangerous place. The men who go to work in suits and steal trucks for a living are nicer to him than the man who married his mother and signed his name on his birth certificate. This is something the movie is very careful not to spell out. It does not give Henry a speech about it. It does not have him sit somebody down and explain why he made the choice he made. It just shows you the apartment, shows you the father, shows you the belt, and shows you the cab stand across the street where the men are smiling. And then it lets you do the math. Henry's voiceover, as always, makes the choice sound simple. He says, "Once in a while I'd have to take a beating, but by then I didn't care. The way that we were treated, like we got from runts to royalty, you know. We weren't like anybody else." He is talking about the cab stand crew. He is talking about how, even as a kid, walking around with these men made him feel like somebody. The beating from his father, in his telling, becomes a small price to pay for what he was getting on the other side of the street. But the film, underneath the voiceover, is showing you something Henry himself is not quite saying. The film is showing you a boy who was never going to choose his father's life. Not because he was greedy, not because he was lazy, because his father's life had already taught him that following the rules and working hard did not protect you from being hurt, or being poor, or being yelled at, or being a nobody. His father followed every rule. His father got nothing. The men across the street followed no rules. They got everything. A 12-year-old can see that. A 12-year-old does see that. And once a 12-year-old has seen it, you cannot really unsee it. There is another piece of the cab stand sequence that matters a lot, and it is the piece about Paulie. Paul Cicero is the boss of the local crew. He is the man at the top of the cab stand world. Henry's voiceover describes him as the kind of man who walked slow because he never had to make way for anyone. Everyone made way for him. The film shows Paulie as a quiet, heavy presence. He does not yell. He does not strut. He does not even talk much. He just exists, and the world adjusts around him. For a boy with a loud, angry, exhausted father, Paulie is the opposite of everything he has at home. Paulie is calm. Paulie is patient. Paulie tips the boy generously for small jobs. Paulie pats him on the head. Paulie looks at him like he is somebody. The film is not shy about what is happening here. Henry is finding a second father. He is finding a man who treats him better than his real father does, and he is bonding with that man in a way that will last for the next 30 years of his life. Scorsese said this himself in interviews about the film. He said that part of what makes the ending so painful is that Henry took Paulie almost as a second father. He idolized these guys. He wanted to be a part of them. The whole story, in Scorsese's telling, is about that wanting and what it does to a person over time. So when people watch Goodfellas and ask why Henry did what he did, why he kept choosing the life when it kept hurting him, why he could not walk away even when the chance came, why even at the end of the movie, when he is safe and alive, he still misses it. The answer is at the cab stand. The answer is at the window. The answer is in the apartment with the belt and the hydrant across the street with the smiling men. Henry made his choice before he had any real idea what he was choosing. He made it as a child. And once you make a choice like that as a child, it is not really a choice anymore. It is who you are. There is one more thing about this section of the film that is easy to miss, and it changes how the whole movie reads. Henry can never be a made man. He can never be one of them. Not all the way. Made men, in the world the film is showing you, have to be fully Italian. Henry is half Irish on his father's side and half Sicilian on his mother's. That mixed heritage makes him useful to the crew. He can do things they cannot. He can move in places they cannot. But it also means there is a ceiling. There is a wall. He can run errands, do jobs, make money, marry into the world, become beloved by the bosses. But he can never be sworn in. He can never be made. So the kid at the window has just decided to spend his entire life chasing membership in a club that will never fully accept him. He does not know this yet. He learns it slowly, over the course of years. But the film knows it from the beginning. The film knows that the dream Henry is choosing is a dream he is structurally barred from completing. He can get close. He can get rich. He can get respected. but the door at the very end will always be closed. That is another piece of the tragedy, and it is one the film places very early so that it can pay it off very late. When Tommy gets his big chance to become a made man, when he is dressing up nice and going to what he thinks is his initiation ceremony, Tommy is the only one of the three friends who could ever cross that line. Henry could never go where Tommy was about to go. Jimmy, who is also part Irish, could never go there either. Only Tommy. And Tommy walks into a room expecting to be sworn in and walks into his own execution instead. The kid at the window does not know any of that yet. The kid at the window only knows that he wants to be like the men across the street. He does not know that the men across the street are killing each other. He does not know that the smiling boss who pats him on the head will, decades later, hand him a small envelope of cash and end their friendship in less than a minute. He does not know that the friend he has not even met yet, the friend who will be the funniest and most dangerous person in his entire life, will end up dead on a floor with a bullet in his head. He just sees the suits and the cars and the easy laughter, and he wants in. The movie understands this is a child's reasoning. It does not make fun of him for it. It does not lecture him. It does not turn the whole thing into a warning. It just lets the child make his choice, and then it watches, patiently, for the next 2.5 hours, as that choice plays itself out to its end. That is one of the things that separates Goodfellas from a regular crime movie. A regular crime movie would frame this as a kid going down the wrong path and pay it off as a moral lesson. Goodfellas does not do that. Goodfellas treats Henry's choice with respect. It says, this is what he saw. This is what he wanted. Given what he saw and what he was choosing between, it is not even hard to understand why he chose what he chose. The tragedy is not that he made a stupid choice. The tragedy is that he made an understandable one. The understandable ones are always the saddest in stories like this. The stupid choices are easy to learn from. The understandable ones haunt you, because they make you wonder if you would have done the same thing. The kid at the window starts running errands for the cab stand crew. He starts wearing nicer clothes than the other kids in the neighborhood. He starts skipping school more and more often. He starts doing small jobs, then bigger ones. He starts getting good at it. He starts being noticed. The film moves through these years with a warmth and a speed that makes it feel like the best summer of somebody's life. The music is bouncy. The voiceover is excited. Henry is a kid having the time of his life, and the film lets you feel that with him. Because if it did not let you feel it, the rest of the movie would not work. That is the bargain Scorsese keeps making, over and over, in the early sections of the film. He shows you the choice and lets you understand it. He shows you the joy and lets you feel it. He shows you the small kindnesses of these very dangerous men and lets you see why a lonely, beaten kid would walk toward them rather than away. He is setting you up. He is making sure that by the time the wheels come off, you are the one losing something too, not just Henry. And the boy at the window, somewhere in those early years, grows up. He stops being a kid hanging around the cab stand. He becomes a young man who wears silk suits and waits outside diners for his friends to pull up in nice cars. He has not yet pulled off any of his big jobs. He has not yet met Karen. He has not yet been to the Copa. He has not yet stood by the side of a road while a man bled out in a trunk. But he is moving toward all of it now, fast, in a way that feels less like a person making decisions and more like a person being carried by a current he chose to step into a long time ago. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And the night he first steps fully into that current, the night he first sees what this life can really give him when it wants to give him something, That night, the camera is going to do something it has never quite done before in any movie. And the woman sitting next to him is not going to know what is about to happen to her. Section 3. The Copacabana Shot. Why the most beautiful 3 minutes in American cinema are a trap. A young woman is sitting in the passenger seat of a car parked across the street from a famous nightclub. Her name is Karen. She is on a date with Henry Hill. She has been on one date with him before, and she did not enjoy it. And she only agreed to this second date because Henry tracked her down at her parents' house and refused to leave until she gave him another chance. Now they are sitting in his car on the night that is going to change her entire life. And she does not know it yet. Henry tells her not to bother with the line at the front of the club. He tells her they are going in a different way. He gets out, walks around, opens her door and takes her hand. The camera stays with them. He hands the keys to a man on the curb. He tips that man without looking at him. He walks her across the street, down a small set of stairs, and through a back door of the building. The camera does not cut. It will not cut for almost 3 full minutes. What follows is one of the most famous shots in the history of American film. It is called the Copacabana Shot, named after the nightclub it goes through. The camera follows Henry and Karen down a narrow hallway, past kitchen workers shouting over the noise, around a corner, through more red corridors, past men playing cards in side rooms, into the kitchen itself with all its steam and clanging pots and busy staff, out the other side, and finally through a curtain into the main dining room of the Copa, where a waiter is unfolding a fresh white tablecloth onto a small table that has just appeared, as if by magic, right at the front of the stage. Henry slides into a seat. Karen slides in next to him. Champagne arrives without being ordered. A bottle is sent over from another table with a friendly nod. A comedian named Henny Youngman walks onto the stage and tells the audience, "Take my wife, please." That is the shot. 3 minutes. No cuts, no edits, no tricks. Just the camera moving with them, behind them, beside them, through this whole impossible journey from the street to the front row table. It is, by almost universal agreement, one of the most beautiful pieces of moving picture ever made. People who teach film classes use it. People who make movies copy it. Directors as different as Paul Thomas Anderson and Quentin Tarantino, and even Scorsese himself in his later movies, have tried to do something like it again. And none of them have ever quite matched the original. The shot has its own life now, separate from the movie it lives in. People who have never seen Goodfellas have seen this shot in clips and tributes and homages. And almost everybody who watches it walks away with the wrong feeling about what it is actually doing. Most people watch the Copa shot and feel wonder. They feel envy. They feel the rush of being treated like royalty, of skipping the line, of being the one who walks through the back door and ends up at the best table in the house. They feel what Henry feels. They feel what Karen feels. The shot is built to make them feel that way. That is the trap. The Copa shot is not a flex. It is not Scorsese showing off. It is not just a beautiful technical achievement for its own sake. The Copa shot is the most precise piece of moral architecture in the entire film. And what it is doing, very carefully and very deliberately, is putting the audience inside Karen's experience so completely that the audience cannot, after this, claim any distance from her. Whatever she chooses to do for the rest of her life, the audience has chosen with her. Whatever she ignores, the audience has ignored. Whatever she falls in love with, the audience has fallen in love with too. Scorsese said this in his own words. He has said many times in interviews about the film that the Copa scene is Henry's seduction of Karen. But it is also the gangster lifestyle's seduction of him. And it is also the movie's seduction of the audience. All three seductions are happening at once, in the same shot, with the same camera, in the same 3 minutes. Karen is being seduced by Henry. Henry is being seduced by the world he is showing off. The audience is being seduced by Scorsese. The shot exists because of an accident, by the way. The film crew was not allowed to film at the front entrance of the Rio Copacabana nightclub. They could not get permission. The original plan was to walk Henry and Karen in through the front door like normal customers, but the front door was off limits. So Scorsese had to figure out another way. He decided to send them in through the back, and once he decided that, he decided to do it all in one shot. Because the long, winding journey through the back of the building would, on its own, tell the audience everything they needed to know about who Henry was in this world. A problem became the most famous moment in the movie. The man who actually carried the camera that night is named Larry McConkey. He used a special rig called a Steadicam, which is a piece of equipment strapped to a person's body that lets them walk smoothly while holding a heavy camera. McConkey rehearsed the shot for hours. They had to time every single person in the hallway. They had to time the kitchen workers. They had to time the waiters. They had to time when the table got placed in the dining room and when the chairs slid in and when the champagne arrived. Every small movement was choreographed to the second. They shot it 8 times. The 8th take is the one in the movie. While they were shooting it, the song that was playing was "Then He Kissed Me" by the Crystals. It is a song about a girl meeting a boy at a dance, dancing with him all night, and being kissed for the first time. The lyrics are about innocence, about being swept off your feet, about falling in love so hard that the world disappears. The song is from 1963. The scene is set in the early 1960s. Scorsese had a rule for the soundtrack of the entire film, which is that he would only use songs that could have actually been heard at the time the scene takes place. "Then He Kissed Me" fits that rule. But it also fits something else. It fits exactly what Karen is feeling. She is being kissed, in a sense, by an entire world. And the audience, behind the camera, is being kissed too. There is a reason the camera stays behind them for almost the whole shot. Most movies, when two characters walk somewhere together, will cut to their faces. The camera will show you the man's expression, then the woman's expression, then the man's again, so you can read what they are feeling. The Copa shot refuses to do that. The camera stays at their backs. It glides along behind them. It does not show you Karen's face very often. It does not show you Henry's face very often. What it shows you is what they are seeing, what is in front of them, what is unfolding for them. Which means you are not watching them have this experience. You are having it with them. You are the third person on this date. That is the choice. That is the moral move the film is making. Scorsese is saying, you cannot watch this from the outside. You have to walk in with them. You have to feel the doors opening. You have to feel the staff smiling at you. You have to feel the table appearing for you and the champagne being sent over to you and the comedian walking out and starting his act for you. You have to feel like a king for 3 minutes. You do not get to keep your distance. Once you have felt that, you are different. You are not the same person you were before the shot started. And neither is Karen. There is a small, very telling moment near the end of the shot, after they have been seated. Karen leans toward Henry and asks him a question. She asks him what he does for a living. Henry says, "I'm in construction." Karen looks at his hands, smiles, and says, "You don't look like you're in construction." Henry, smooth, says, "I'm a union delegate." Karen lets it drop. She does not push. She does not ask again. She has just been told a lie, a very obvious lie, by the man who has spent the last 3 minutes proving to her that he is plugged into something far bigger than construction. And she lets the lie sit there. She accepts it. She files it away. That is the moment Karen becomes Karen. Not the moment of the kiss, not the moment of the table. The moment of the lie. The moment she decides, in a small, quiet, unspoken way, that she is going to live in this world by not asking too many questions. By looking at evidence and choosing not to see it. By accepting the construction worker story, even though her own eyes are telling her something else. The film knows what it is doing here. The film is showing you, in real time, the exact mental move that Karen will keep making for the next 20 years. Every time something violent happens, every time Henry comes home with money he should not have, every time the FBI knocks on the door, every time a body turns up, Karen will make this same small move. She will look at the evidence and she will choose not to see it. She is rehearsing that move for the first time at the front table of the Copacabana while a comedian tells jokes about marriage. And the audience, sitting at the same table, has rehearsed it too. That is why the Copa shot is a trap. That is why it works. The shot is so beautiful, so seamless, so warm, that the viewer does the same thing Karen does. The viewer accepts the world the shot is showing without asking the questions that would break the spell. The viewer does not stop and think, why are these doors opening? Who are these people? What is the price of this table? What did Henry have to do? What does Henry have to do to get treated like this? The viewer does not ask. The viewer just enjoys. By the time the shot ends and Henny Youngman is on stage, the deal is done. Karen has signed up. The audience has signed up. Everyone is in. This is the most important thing the film does in its first hour. This is the hinge that everything else swings on. Because once you have walked through the back of the Copa with Henry, once you have felt how good it feels to be on the inside of his world, you cannot honestly say later that you do not understand why Karen stayed. You stayed too. For 3 whole minutes you stayed. You enjoyed it. You wanted more of it. You did not want the camera to cut. So when, much later in the film, Karen is on a phone with the FBI, deciding whether to flip on her own husband, when she is hiding cocaine in a coat, when she is screaming at Henry in their kitchen and pointing a gun at his face, and still deciding she cannot leave him. The film is not asking you to judge her. The film already showed you, in the Copa shot, why she could not leave. The Copa shot was the answer to the question the rest of the movie was going to ask. The other thing the Copa shot is doing, which is harder to see but just as important, is that it is establishing the visual language of Henry at the height of his power. This is what Henry looks like when he is fully in his element. The camera glides. The doors open. The world bends to him. There are no edits, because Henry's life, in this moment, has no friction. Nothing interrupts him. Nothing slows him down. The shot has no cuts, because Henry has no problems. Hold on to that, because the film is going to come back to it. The film is going to set up another long shot, much later, when Henry's world is falling apart. That later shot is going to be the opposite of this one. It is going to be choppy and fast and full of cuts. The camera is going to lose its smoothness. The world is going to stop bending around Henry and start closing in on him. And by then, the audience is going to feel the difference in their bodies. even if they cannot name it. Because the audience will remember, somewhere in the back of their head, what it felt like to walk through the copa with no cuts and no problems and no friction. That is how Scorsese builds a tragedy out of camera movement. He shows you the smoothness first. He lets you fall in love with the smoothness. And then, very slowly, over the course of the next 2 hours, he takes the smoothness away. When the copa shot finally ends, the table is set, the champagne is poured, the comedian is on stage, and Karen is laughing. Henry is leaning back in his chair like a man who has done this 1,000 times. The camera, after 3 minutes of motion, finally settles. The audience exhales. The seduction is complete. Karen does not yet know the names of the men sitting at the next table over. She does not yet know what they have done. She does not yet know what they are capable of doing. She just knows that her boyfriend, who told her he was in construction, is somehow being treated like a king in the most famous nightclub in New York, and that she is being treated like a queen by his side. She is about to meet his friends. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And one of them, a short man with a wide smile and a story to tell, is about to make the whole table laugh so hard that Henry, in a moment of warmth, is going to call him a funny guy. And the funny guy is going to stop laughing, and the room is going to go quiet. And Karen, sitting next to Henry, is about to learn the second rule of the world she just walked into: that the laughter and the violence in this place do not live in separate rooms, but in the same breath, in the same sentence, in the same man. Section 4. The funny how scene, when the joke becomes a threat in the same breath. The table is full. The drinks are flowing. Henry is sitting with his friends in a back room of a place called the Bamboo Lounge, and Tommy DeVito is in the middle of a story. Tommy is always in the middle of a story. He is the one who talks the most, laughs the loudest, gestures the biggest. He is the smallest man at the table physically, but he takes up the most space. Everybody is leaning toward him. Everybody is hanging on his words. He finishes his story with a punchline, and the whole table breaks into laughter. Big, real, room-shaking laughter. Henry, still laughing, slaps the table and says, "You're a funny guy." The laughter stops. Tommy looks up. His face changes. The smile is still on his mouth, technically, but something behind his eyes has shifted. He says, "What do you mean, I'm funny?" Henry, still smiling, still feeling the warmth of the joke, says, "You know, you're just funny. You're a funny guy." Tommy says, "Funny how?" Funny how? What's funny about it? The room has gone completely quiet. Tommy keeps going. Funny like a clown. I amuse you. I make you laugh. I'm here to amuse you. What do you mean, funny? Funny how? How am I funny? Henry is now in trouble. He can see it in Tommy's face. Everybody at the table can see it. The waiter who has just walked over with a tray of drinks can see it. The other men sitting nearby, men in suits who have known Tommy a long time and know what Tommy does to people who insult him, are watching very, very carefully. Henry's mouth opens and closes. He cannot find the right words. There are no right words. Anything he says is going to be wrong. He stammers. He says, "Just, you know, the way you tell the story." Tommy is not letting up. Tommy keeps coming. No, I don't know. You said it. How am I funny? What the fuck is so funny about me? Tell me. Tell me what's funny. The whole scene has been happening for less than 30 seconds, and it feels like 10 minutes. Henry, finally, breaks into a laugh and says, "Get the fuck out of here, Tommy." He has called Tommy's bluff. Tommy has been messing with him. The whole thing was a joke. Tommy starts laughing too. The whole table starts laughing again. The laughter comes back even louder than before, partly out of relief, partly because everybody at the table just thought, for a few seconds, that they were going to watch their friend get killed at dinner. That is the funny how scene. That is the most famous scene in the movie that does not involve a long camera shot or a dead body. People who have never seen Goodfellas have seen this scene. People quote it. People parody it. People have used the line, "funny how funny," in workplaces, in classrooms, in conversations for over 35 years. Almost nobody talks about what it is actually doing in the film. The first thing that is worth knowing about this scene is that it almost did not exist. The scene was not in the script. Joe Pesci, who plays Tommy, told Scorsese a story one day during rehearsals. The story was about something that had happened to Pesci as a young man when he was working as a waiter in a restaurant. Pesci had served a customer who turned out to be a real wise guy. The wise guy was a good tipper, and Pesci, trying to be friendly, told him he was funny. The wise guy did not laugh. The wise guy looked at Pesci and asked him what he meant by funny, and Pesci spent the next several seconds trying very hard not to die. The wise guy was messing with him, the way Tommy ends up messing with Henry, but Pesci did not know that yet. He thought he was about to get killed in a restaurant for using the wrong word. Pesci told Scorsese this story. Scorsese loved it. He told Pesci, "We have to put it in the movie." They worked it out together. They wrote the scene. Then Scorsese made a decision that changed everything about how the scene plays. He decided not to tell the other actors at the table what was about to happen. He gave Pesci and Ray Liotta the scene, but he kept the rest of the cast in the dark. The men sitting around Tommy and Henry at that table, the men whose faces you see watching this happen, did not know it was a joke. They thought their co-star Pesci had genuinely lost it. They thought they were watching a real moment turn ugly. The reactions you see in the movie, the stiff bodies and the careful faces and the silence, are real reactions. Scorsese made the scene work by making it happen for real to the people in the room. That is the level of care that went into this single minute of film. That is the level of trust Scorsese had in his cast and in his audience. He believed Pesci and Liotta could carry something this dangerous live, and he believed the rest of the cast could be left to react honestly. And he believed the audience would feel it the way the actors felt it. He was right about all three. The scene won Joe Pesci an Oscar. It is the only Oscar the entire film won. Goodfellas was nominated for 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director, and lost almost all of them to Dances with Wolves, which is one of the most famous Oscar mistakes in the history of the awards. The one award that did come home was for Pesci, and the funny how scene is the reason. That single minute of film, that small piece of nearly improvised performance that almost did not exist, is the thing that gave the movie its only piece of gold. Now, why does it matter beyond being a great scene? It matters because it is the moment the film teaches you the most important rule of Henry's world. The rule is that laughter and violence in this place are the same thing. They live in the same breath. They wear the same face. They come out of the same mouth. The man who is making the whole table laugh and the man who is about to put a knife in your eye are not two different men. They are the same man in the same chair. and the only thing that decides which version of him you get is something that lives entirely inside his head. And you do not get to know what it is. That is what makes Tommy terrifying. Tommy is not terrifying because he is mean. Tommy is terrifying because he is fun. He is the most fun person at any party. He is the funniest person at the dinner. He is the person you want to sit next to. And he is also the person who is going to decide, at some unpredictable moment, that something you said means something it did not mean. And once he has decided that, there is no taking it back. The film proves this point twice more, in two scenes that are much harder to watch than the funny how scene. Both scenes involve a young bartender named Spider. Spider is a kid. He works at a card game where Henry, Jimmy, Tommy, and other men are playing all night. He is the one bringing them drinks. One night, Spider is slow with Tommy's drink. Tommy starts giving him a hard time. The other men at the table laugh. Tommy keeps going. He tells Spider to dance, like in the old Western movies, and pretends to draw a gun on him. The men laugh more. Then Tommy actually does pull out a real gun and shoots at the floor near Spider's feet, and one of the bullets hits Spider in the foot. Spider yells. Spider falls. The men at the table laugh. A week later, Spider is back at the card game. He is wearing a cast on his foot. He is limping. Tommy starts in on him again. Tommy is teasing him about the cast, telling him he should have been faster, telling him it serves him right. The other men are laughing again. Spider, finally, has had enough. Spider tells Tommy off. He uses harsh words. He tells Tommy to go away in the rudest possible way. Jimmy laughs. Jimmy says, "Hey, look at this kid. He's got some balls." The other men cheer. Spider stands up a little straighter, proud of himself. Tommy stares at him for a second. Then Tommy pulls out his gun and empties it into Spider. Spider goes down. He is dead before he hits the floor. The men at the table stop laughing. Jimmy, who 1 second ago was praising the kid for standing up for himself, looks at Tommy and calls him a sick maniac. They have a body on their hands now. They have to clean it up. They have to bury it somewhere. The card game is over. That is the second Spider scene. That is the moment the film stops letting you laugh at Tommy. The funny how scene was a joke. The first Spider scene was a sick joke. The second Spider scene is just a murder, in front of everybody, over nothing. A kid is dead because Tommy did not like being talked back to. A kid is dead because for 1 second he was the hero of the table, instead of Tommy. The film places these scenes very carefully. The funny how scene comes first, when the audience still likes Tommy. The first Spider scene comes a little later, when the audience is starting to feel uneasy. The second Spider scene comes after that, when the audience cannot pretend anymore that Tommy is just colorful or just hot-headed. By the time Tommy is shooting Spider dead at a card table, the film has used Tommy to teach you the lesson it has been building since the funny how scene. The lesson is that the warmth and the violence are not separate. They never were. The warmth was the violence putting on a friendly face for a few minutes, and the moment the warmth is not getting Tommy what he wants, it goes away. And what is underneath it is a man with a gun and no rules. There is a third Tommy scene that pushes this even further. Earlier in the film, the men have just murdered a man named Billy Bats. Billy Bats insulted Tommy at a bar by bringing up a job Tommy had as a kid, shining shoes. The insult was small. Billy Bats was drunk, the kind of comment any normal person would let go. Tommy did not let it go. Tommy and Jimmy waited for Billy Bats to come back later, and then they beat him almost to death and threw him in a trunk. They drove the trunk to Tommy's mother's house at 3 in the morning. They needed a knife to finish the job, because Billy Bats was somehow still alive in the trunk. Tommy's mother is home. She is old. She is sweet. She is happy to see her son. She makes them food. She insists they sit down and eat. While Billy Bats is still bleeding to death in the trunk of the car parked in her driveway, Tommy is sitting at his mother's kitchen table, eating her cooking and laughing at her jokes, and telling her stories, and showing her the perfect, charming face of a son who loves his mother. This dinner scene was also mostly improvised. Catherine Scorsese, who plays Tommy's mother, is the director's actual real-life mother. She did not have a script. She just talked to her son's friends the way she would talk to her own son's friends. She showed them a painting she had been working on. The men complimented it. They ate her food. They were warm and polite and grateful. And then they left, got back in the car, drove the body to a remote field, and buried it. The film cuts directly from the kitchen warmth to the burial. The two scenes share the same air, the same night, the same men. The same hands that held the fork at dinner are the hands that hold the shovel at the grave. That is what the funny how scene was preparing you for. The dinner with the mother, the murder of Spider, the Billy Bats beating, all of it. The funny how scene was a small, controlled demonstration of how this world's warmth works. And once you have seen it work, you cannot unsee it. Every laugh at every dinner table for the rest of the movie has a small, cold thing sitting inside it. Every joke is also a test. Every smile is also a question. The audience, by the end of these scenes, has learned what Henry learned a long time ago. To survive in this world, you have to laugh at every joke and never relax for a second. You have to know, at all times, that the warmest person at the table can become the most dangerous person at the table without warning, and that there is nothing you can do, no word you can choose, no tone you can use that will guarantee your safety. You can only stay alert. You can only stay sharp. You can only laugh on time and stop laughing on time, and hope you read the room correctly. This is what Henry has been doing since he was 12. This is what the boy at the window did not see when he was watching the men double park in front of fire hydrants. The boy at the window saw the easy laughter. He did not see what was inside it. He learned what was inside it slowly, over years, by being there for the funny how moments and the Spider moments and the Billy Bats moments, until the alertness became a way of life, until reading the room became as automatic as breathing. By the time the funny how scene happens in the film, Henry already knows the rules. That is why he is able to laugh his way out of it. He has been doing this for a long time. He knows when Tommy is messing with him and when Tommy is not messing with him. And he knows the difference is small, and he knows getting it wrong gets you killed. Karen, sitting next to him, is just learning. She is at the beginning of the same education Henry got as a child. She is watching, in real time, the way the laughter at this table can switch into something else. She is feeling it in her body. She is feeling, for the first time, what it is like to sit at a table with these men and be afraid of them. The film never tells you what Karen thinks of the funny how scene. It does not give her a reaction shot. It does not give her a private monologue afterward. It just lets her sit there next to Henry, watching, learning, taking it in. Whatever she decides about Henry and his friends, whatever she decides about whether to keep going on this date and the next date and the date after that, she is deciding while still hearing Tommy's voice in her head asking, "Funny how? How am I funny?" She decides to stay. She decides to keep going. She decides she likes the danger as much as she likes the glamour. Maybe more. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And that decision, made quietly inside her own head, while a comedian named Henny Youngman was telling jokes about marriage, is going to grow over the next 20 years into something neither she nor Henry could have predicted on the night of the Copa. Because the men at the next table over, the loud, charming, dangerous men whose laughter she just learned how to read, are about to pull off a robbery so big and so famous that it will end up in history books. And the money from that robbery is going to start showing up in dead bodies all over the city. And one of those bodies, eventually, is going to be Tommy's. Section 5. The Lufthansa Heist and the Layla Coda. When the camera stops caring about us. On the night of December 11th, 1978, a small group of men walked into a cargo building at Kennedy Airport in New York and walked out with around $6 million in cash and jewels. It was, at the time, the biggest cash robbery ever pulled off on American soil. It became famous. Newspapers covered it for weeks. The FBI poured agents into the case. Every wise guy in New York heard about it within days. The robbery is now known as the Lufthansa Heist, named after the German airline whose money it was. In Goodfellas, the heist itself is never shown. This is one of the strangest choices in the entire film, and one of the most important. The biggest event in the real Henry Hill's life. The crime that made him and his friends rich beyond anything they had ever imagined. The moment the whole criminal world stopped to watch, and the movie just skips it. There is no big scene of men in masks running through the airport. There is no long sequence of safes being cracked. There is no clever plan being laid out on a kitchen table. The film tells you, through Henry's voiceover, that the heist happened. And then it cuts to the morning after, with Henry in the shower, finding out on the phone that Jimmy and the crew pulled it off. The reason for this is simple, and it tells you everything about how the film thinks. Henry Hill, in real life, was not actually at the heist. He helped plan it. He took a small cut. But he was not on the ground at the airport that night. The film stays inside Henry's experience. If Henry was not there, the camera is not there. The audience does not see the thing Henry did not see. That sounds like a small choice, but it is doing something huge. The film is telling you, very quietly, that this story is not about the crimes. It is about the man telling the story. The crimes are background. The crimes are weather. What matters is what Henry felt about them. And what Henry felt about the Lufthansa heist was excitement at first, and then, very quickly, fear. Because what came after the heist was a body count. Jimmy Conway, played by Robert De Niro, was the brain behind the robbery. He had been planning it for months. He had given his crew strict instructions. The instructions were simple. After the heist, lay low. Do not spend the money in obvious ways. Do not buy flashy cars. Do not buy fur coats. Do not throw parties. Do not draw attention. The robbery had been clean. As long as nobody did anything stupid, nobody would get caught. Of course, somebody did something stupid. And then somebody else did something stupid. And then almost everybody did something stupid. A man named Stax Edwards, played in a small role by a young Samuel L. Jackson, was supposed to get rid of the truck used in the robbery. He got high instead and forgot. The truck was found by police, fingerprints all over it. A man named Johnny Roastbeef bought himself a brand new pink Cadillac and drove his fiancée around in it like a king. A man named Frankie Carbone bought a giant fur coat for his wife and made her wear it everywhere. A man named Maury, who was an old friend of Henry's, kept calling Jimmy to demand his cut, again and again, week after week, even after Jimmy told him to be patient. Jimmy started to do the math. Every loud spender was a future witness. Every loud spender, sooner or later, was going to get arrested for something small. And once he was sitting in a small room with the FBI, he was going to give up Jimmy to save himself. Jimmy could not let that happen. So Jimmy made another decision. He decided to clean up his own crew. What follows in the film is one of the most famous sequences ever put on screen. It is sometimes called the Layla montage. It runs about 4 minutes long. There is no real dialogue. Henry's voice comes in occasionally over the top of it, naming the men and explaining what happened. The piece of music underneath the whole sequence is the second half of a song called Layla, written by Eric Clapton and his band Derek and the Dominoes. The first half of Layla is a famous loud rock song about a man in love with a woman he cannot have. The second half is something completely different. It is a slow, sad piano part that goes on for minutes. Acoustic guitars come in. A second guitar plays a high, mournful line over the top. There are no lyrics. It just plays itself out, slowly, like a long, quiet goodbye. Scorsese had this song on the set during filming. He played it out loud while shooting the scene. His editor, Thelma Schoonmaker, said in interviews that every shot in the sequence was lined up to a specific note in the music. Every cut hits a beat. Every camera movement matches a phrase. The scene was built from the ground up around the song. What the song plays over is a slideshow of dead bodies. A boy walks up to a parked pink Cadillac in a parking lot. He looks in the window. Inside the car are Johnny Roastbeef and his fiancée, both shot dead, slumped against each other in the front seat. The camera lifts up and away. A garbage truck arrives at a dump. The men start unloading it. 2 more bodies fall out, wrapped in plastic. Frozen, dumped, forgotten. A meat truck pulls up at a delivery spot. Inside the back of the truck, hanging on a hook with the slabs of beef, is Frankie Carbone, frozen solid. The men shut the door of the truck and walk away. Henry's voice comes in over each one. He names the men. He says where they were found. He explains briefly why Jimmy had them killed. The voiceover is flat, tired. There is none of the excitement of the early scenes. The Henry telling this part of the story is not having fun anymore. The Layla coda keeps playing. This is the moment in the movie where everything turns. The first half of the film was a rise, the Copa shot, the funny how scene, the big easy money, the good times with the wives at the dinner table, the boys at the cab stand growing up into men in suits. The Layla montage is the moment the rise officially becomes the fall. And the way Scorsese signals it is by changing the music underneath the movie. Up until this point, the songs in Goodfellas have mostly been pop songs from the time, doo-wop, Motown, early rock and roll. Songs that go with parties and dancing and falling in love. The Crystals during the Copa shot, Tony Bennett during the opening titles, the Cleftones at the cab stand. Even when the songs are sad, they are sad in a young way, a teenage way, a romantic way. The Layla coda is different. The Layla coda is a grown man's grief. It is the music of somebody who has lost something and knows he is not getting it back. By choosing this piece of music for this sequence, Scorsese is telling the audience, in a way the audience can feel without being able to name it, that the movie itself is now mourning what it spent the first half celebrating. The film is not enjoying these men anymore. The film is sad about them. The film is sorry it ever made them look like fun. The bodies in the Layla montage are the proof. The whole rise of the movie was paid for in cash. The Lufthansa money, the biggest score of all of their lives, the dream payoff that was supposed to set them up forever, has just turned every one of them into a target. The money did not buy them freedom. The money bought them a slow execution. Jimmy is the one pulling the trigger now, and Jimmy will keep pulling it until everybody who could connect him to the heist is in a hole, or in a freezer, or in the trunk of a car. There is one more body in the montage that hits harder than the others. Maury, the old friend, the loud one, the one who would not stop asking for his cut. Jimmy and Tommy give him a ride one night. Tommy stabs him in the back of the neck with an ice pick. The film shows it. It is quick. It is ugly. There is no music in that exact moment, just the sounds of the car. Then the car keeps driving, and Layla comes back in over the top, and the sequence keeps moving. What Scorsese is doing with the Layla coda is something almost no other director in the world has the nerve to do. He is taking the most violent, most morally awful sequence in his movie, and he is scoring it to one of the most beautiful pieces of music ever recorded. He is forcing the audience to feel two opposite things at the same time. The eyes are seeing horror. The ears are hearing tenderness. Neither one cancels out the other. They both stay. The audience is left somewhere in the middle, moved and sickened at the same time. And the movie does not tell you which feeling is correct, because the movie thinks they are both correct, and the gap between them is the point. That is the moment Goodfellas stops being a gangster movie and starts being something sadder. The energy that powered the first half, the rush, the music, the laughter, the speed of the camera, is still there technically, but it is doing different work now. It is being used to grieve. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And while the bodies are turning up around the city, while Jimmy is becoming a different man and the crew is becoming a graveyard, somebody at home, in a small house in the suburbs, is starting to wake up. Somebody who used to look the other way is starting to look directly at it. Somebody who has been narrating her own version of this whole story in her own voice from the very beginning is about to take over the movie. Section 6. Karen. The witness becomes the accomplice, becomes the casualty. Karen Friedman is a young Jewish woman from a respectable Long Island family. She is smart. She is sharp. She has a quick temper and a sharper mouth. She is not somebody who gets pushed around. The first time Henry takes her on a date, she walks out on him because he is late. The second time he tries to set up a date, she stands him up on purpose. He has to track her down at her parents' house and stand on her front step and refuse to leave until she agrees to give him another chance. The Karen we meet at the start of the movie is not somebody falling for a charming criminal. She is somebody who knows exactly what she is worth and refuses to settle for less. This matters because the most common misreading of Karen is that she was tricked, that Henry pulled her into his world and she did not understand what was happening. The film, from her very first scene, refuses to let you read her that way. Karen sees Henry clearly. She knows, almost immediately, that he is dangerous. She knows he is hiding things from her. She sees the wad of cash. She sees the doors opening at the Copa. She hears the lie about being in construction and lets it go. She chooses this. She keeps choosing it. There is a scene early in their relationship that the film places like a warning bell. A neighbor of Karen's, a young man, makes a pass at her one night and gets too aggressive. She pulls away. She is shaken. She tells Henry about it. Henry's response is to take a handgun out of his belt and walk across the street and pistol whip the neighbor in front of her. He cracks the gun across the man's face until the man is bleeding on the pavement. Then walks back to Karen, hands her the gun, and tells her to hide it. In her own voiceover, in the very next scene, Karen says, "I got to admit the truth. It turned me on." That is one of the most honest sentences in the entire movie. It is not the line of a woman being slowly seduced against her will. It is the line of a woman who has just learned something true about herself, something she did not know before, and decided to live with it. Henry is the kind of man who will hurt people for her. That is exciting to her. The film does not flinch from that. It does not protect her. It lets her say it out loud, and lets the audience sit with the fact that the woman who is supposed to be the moral voice of the story is finding the same things attractive that Henry finds attractive, just in a different way. Karen is given her own voiceover throughout the entire film. This is one of the most important things Scorsese does with her, and it is easy to miss. There are exactly two characters in Goodfellas who are allowed to talk directly to the audience. Henry is one, Karen is the other. Nobody else gets that. Not Jimmy, not Tommy, not Paulie, not the kids, just Henry and Karen. The film has decided that this story has two narrators, and that the second narrator is the wife. When does Karen's voice come in? It comes in at the moments when Henry's voice cannot be trusted. When Henry is too excited, too high, too in love with himself to tell you what is really going on, the film cuts to Karen and lets her tell it. She talks about meeting the other wives. She talks about the hijacked goods showing up in the kitchen. She talks about how the money changed her. She talks about the small dinners with the other mob wives, all of them sitting around tables exchanging gossip, all of them with husbands doing the same things, all of them quietly understanding that they were never going to ask too many questions. Karen says, after a while, it got to be all normal. We were all so very close. There were never any outsiders around. Absolutely never. And being together all the time made everything seem all the more normal. Then she adds, in a smaller, sharper voice, "We'd call that losing perspective." She is naming what is happening to her, even as it is happening to her. She knows. She has always known. The film keeps showing you that she knows. She is not stupid. She is not blind. She is choosing every single day to not let what she knows get in the way of the life she has chosen. The years go by. Henry goes to prison for a stretch. Karen smuggles food and money to him by hiding things in her coat. She becomes part of the operation. She is not a wife on the sidelines. She is on the payroll. She is helping. When Henry gets out of prison and starts moving cocaine, Karen helps him with that too. She makes phone calls, she drives, she handles money. She is, by the late 1970s, fully inside the business. And yet, the thing that finally cracks her is not the violence, not the bodies, not the FBI raids, not the fear of getting killed. The thing that cracks her is that Henry is cheating on her. This is one of the most important details in the film, and it is one Scorsese plays without comment. Karen finds out about Henry's mistress, a woman named Janice. She drives to Janice's apartment building and stands in the lobby, pressing all of the buzzers at once until she has woken up everyone in the building, screaming about what kind of woman Janice is. Then she goes home. Then, later, at 4 in the morning, she sits on top of Henry while he is sleeping with a gun in her hand and points it at his face. Henry wakes up. He pleads with her. He talks her down. She breaks. She cries. She gets off him. She does not pull the trigger. What that scene tells you, very plainly, is that Karen will accept almost anything from Henry, except being replaced. She will accept the violence. She will accept the lies. She will accept the prison. She will accept the FBI knocking on her door. She will accept all of it. What she will not accept is another woman. That is the shape of her tragedy. Karen has built her entire identity around being Henry's wife. Being Henry's wife is what makes her somebody. The same way being a gangster is what makes Henry somebody. Take that away, and she is back to being Karen Friedman from Long Island. A girl who married a guy who turned out to be a criminal. An ordinary woman in an ordinary life. She cannot go back to that. She has lost too much. She has thrown her own family away. Her parents have stopped speaking to her. She has become a stranger in her own former world. Henry is what she has now. Henry is all she has. So Henry, even when he is unfaithful, even when he is unsafe, even when he is bringing the FBI to her front door, is still the only door open to her. The end of the film is where Karen's tragedy lands hardest, in a scene most people remember as a Henry moment, but which is really hers. The crew is collapsing. Henry has been arrested for cocaine. Jimmy is starting to look at Henry the way he looked at the men in the Layla montage. Karen meets Jimmy on a sidewalk outside a building. He is being warm with her, calm, friendly. He tells her to go inside the building, down a hallway, into a back room where there are some dresses he wants to give her. Free, top quality. Take whatever she wants. Karen looks at the building. The building is empty. The doorway is dark. There is no reason for dresses to be in a back room of an empty building. She knows immediately what is being offered to her. Jimmy is trying to lure her into a place where she can be killed quietly. The film holds on her face. She does not say anything dramatic. She does not scream. She just looks at him, looks at the doorway, looks back at him, and tells him she has to go pick up the kids. Then she turns around and walks away as fast as she can without running. That moment is the end of Karen as we have known her, the woman who was turned on by a pistol whipping, the woman who hid the cocaine and made the calls and ran the household around her husband's crimes, the woman who pointed a gun at her own husband over a mistress, has just realized that her husband's best friend wants her dead. Everything she chose, every door she walked through, every lie she let go, has led her to a sidewalk in front of an empty building where the man she has known for 20 years is calmly trying to kill her. She drives home. She tells Henry what happened. Henry knows. The two of them, sitting at their kitchen table, have to face the same fact at the same time. The life is over. Whatever they decide next, they have to decide it together. And they have to decide it fast, and there is nobody left who is on their side. The Karen who walks into a courthouse to testify a few weeks later is not the same Karen who walked into the Copa 20 years earlier. The Copa Karen was being seduced. The courthouse Karen is being hollowed out. The film has tracked the entire arc of one woman's life, from a girl on a date to a woman in witness protection. And the most painful thing about it is that almost every choice she made knowingly. She is not a victim of Henry. She is a casualty of her own decisions. Which is harder? Which is sadder? Which is, in the film's quiet view, the truth of how this kind of life eats the people who choose it. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Henry, watching all of this happen, has his own collapse coming. And his is going to look very different from Karen's. His is going to happen in one single day, on a sunny afternoon in May with a helicopter overhead and a pot of sauce on the stove. And the movie itself is going to come apart at the seams while it happens. Section 7. Sunday, May 11th, 1980. The day the movie has a nervous breakdown. A white card appears on the screen. Black letters, plain font. The card reads, Sunday, May 11th, 1980. Below the date, a time, 6:55 a.m. Then the picture comes back. Henry Hill is in his kitchen. He is doing a line of cocaine before he has even brushed his teeth. He grabs a paper bag full of guns and heads for his car. The first notes of a Harry Nilsson song called Jump Into the Fire start to play. The drums kick in. Henry pulls out of his driveway. He looks up at the sky. There is a helicopter up there, somewhere, circling. He thinks it is following him. What follows over the next 10 minutes of screen time is the most famous breakdown sequence in the history of American film. And it is the moment Goodfellas stops being a movie about a man losing his mind and becomes a movie that is itself losing its mind, on purpose, in real time, in front of the audience. Scorsese said it plainly in interviews. He wanted Henry's last day as a wise guy to feel like the film itself was coming apart. He wanted the form, the shape, the way the camera and the editing and the music behaved to mirror what was happening inside Henry's head. The first half of the film had been smooth. Long takes, floating camera, songs from a happier era. Henry on top, the world bending around him. The Copa shot was the visual peak of all of that. The May 11th sequence is the opposite of the Copa shot. It is the Copa shot in reverse. Everything that was smooth is now choppy. Everything that flowed is now cut to pieces. The world is no longer bending. The world is closing in. The day is given to us in pieces, marked by those white cards. 6:55 a.m., 8:05 a.m., 8:45 a.m., 11:30 a.m., 12:30 p.m., 1:30 p.m., 3:30 p.m. The clock keeps ticking. The cards keep appearing. Henry is being measured by minutes now, because he can no longer measure his life any other way. Look at what he is trying to do in a single Sunday. He has to drop off guns at Jimmy's house. Jimmy does not want them. Henry has to figure out somewhere else to take them. He has to pick up his brother Michael from the hospital. Michael is in a wheelchair. Henry has to drive him home and get him settled. He has to mix cocaine with another substance to thin it out for sale, which he is doing at his mistress Sandy's apartment. He has to drive a babysitter named Lois to the airport so she can carry drugs to Atlanta. He has to keep checking in at his own house, where he is also cooking a full Italian Sunday dinner from scratch. A tomato sauce that needs hours of attention, with sausages and meatballs and pork. The kind of meal his wife and his disabled brother are expecting on the table when night falls. He is selling drugs, mixing drugs, moving guns, lying to his wife, lying to his mistress, watching the sky for a helicopter, doing line after line of cocaine to keep himself going, and stirring a pot of red sauce, all on the same day, all on his own. The film cuts between these tasks faster and faster as the day goes on. The editor, Thelma Schoonmaker, said in interviews that the team kept screening the sequence and saying, "Faster, faster, faster." Every cut got tightened. Every shot got shorter. The cuts start to feel like a heartbeat that is going too fast. Henry stirring the sauce. Cut. Henry on the phone. Cut. Henry looking at the sky. Cut. Henry doing another line. Cut. Henry in the car. Cut. The sky again. Cut. Lois packing drugs. Cut. The sauce again. Cut. The sky. The music is doing the same thing the editing is doing. Where the first half of the movie had songs that sat under scenes, supporting them, Sunday, May 11th has songs that crash into each other. Jump Into the Fire by Harry Nilsson plays once, then plays again later. A song by the Rolling Stones called Monkey Man cuts in. Magic Bus by The Who rips through a driving scene. Memo from Turner, sung by Mick Jagger, plays for another part of the day. What Is Life by George Harrison comes in for another. The songs do not last long. They get cut off. They get interrupted. They overlap. The needle keeps getting yanked off the record. Just like Henry's day, the music has no patience anymore. It cannot sit still. The helicopter is the key to all of it. The helicopter is the thing Henry keeps looking up at. He sees it everywhere. He sees it when he is driving. He sees it from his kitchen window. He sees it from his mistress's apartment. He sees it overhead when he is loading guns into his trunk. The helicopter, in the actual real story, may or may not have been there. The film never resolves it. We never see the helicopter clearly. We never see who is inside it. We never get a wide shot from above the city showing Henry's car being followed. We only ever see what Henry sees, when he sees it. A flash of something in the sky, a noise, a blur. He tells his wife about it. She looks up too, and she also seems to see something. But the audience cannot tell whether she is really seeing it or whether she is just feeling what Henry is feeling. That is the trick. The film is putting the audience inside Henry's head so completely that we are not sure what is real anymore either. If Henry says the helicopter is there, the helicopter is there. If Henry says it left, it left. If Henry says it came back, it came back. We have no second source. We have no outside view. We are stuck where Henry is stuck, which is a very small room inside his own paranoia. A room where every ceiling is a sky and every sky has something circling above it. This is what cocaine does to a person. Henry is doing line after line all day, and the film is showing you, through its own pace and rhythm, what that feels like from the inside. It feels like a lot of small, urgent tasks all happening at once. It feels like nothing can wait. It feels like every conversation is too long. It feels like every drive is too short. It feels like the sauce is going to burn if you turn your back for 1 second. It feels like the babysitter's lucky hat is the most important thing in the world. There is a moment in the sequence where Lois, the babysitter, refuses to leave on the airport drive without her lucky hat. Henry, sweating, exhausted, jittering, has to scream at her about the hat. He has to deal with her hat as if it is a major problem in his life. Because in this moment, on this day, in his head, it is. The film stays with the hat. The film makes the hat important. The film shares Henry's distorted view of what matters. By the late afternoon, the entire visual language of the movie has changed. The camera is no longer floating. The camera is shaking. Handheld shots replace the smooth, Steadicam moves of earlier scenes. Faces are too close to the lens. Backgrounds are blurry. The cuts come on top of each other. Henry is sweating through his shirt. His eyes are red. His hands are jumping. He is not the boy at the cab stand anymore. He is not the man at the front table at the Copa anymore. He is something hollowed out, running on pure fear and chemicals. Then, at the end of the day, after the sauce is stirred and the meatballs are made, and the brother has been picked up, and dinner has somehow happened, and the babysitter has been pushed out the door with her hat, Henry pulls into his driveway. Cars surround him. Men in jackets pour out of them. Guns are pointed at him. The DEA arrests him in his own driveway, in front of his own house, while his family is inside. And then something incredible happens. The music stops. For the entire previous 10 minutes of screen time, music has been pouring out of the screen. 5 different songs, layered, cut off, restarted, interrupted. The soundtrack has been a wall of noise pushing the day forward. The second Henry is in handcuffs, the soundtrack goes silent. There is no song. There is no score. There is no music at all. From the moment of Henry's arrest until the very end credits of the film, the music is gone. The film has run out of songs. That choice is one of the quietest, most powerful decisions in the entire movie. Scorsese and his team made a rule for the soundtrack: only songs that could have been heard at the time. They followed that rule for hundreds of song choices. And then, at the end, when Henry's life as a gangster is officially over, they chose silence. The silence is the absence of the world Henry chose. The silence is what is left when the music stops. The silence is the egg noodles and ketchup waiting on the other side. Henry, sitting in the back of the car after his arrest, finally understands. His face is empty. His eyes have stopped jumping. He is not high anymore. He is not running anymore. He is just a man in cuffs, looking at nothing, hearing nothing, on a quiet street in front of a quiet house, with a quiet wife inside who is about to have her own kitchen turned upside down by federal agents. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The day is over. The life is over. The movie has another 20 minutes to go, but the gangster part of it is finished. What is left is everything that comes after the music stops. And what comes after the music stops is the longest, slowest, hardest part of the whole story for Henry to live through. Because what comes after the music stops is silence. And silence is the one thing Henry has spent his entire life running from. Section 8. The schnook ending. Why the most devastating line in the movie is egg noodles and ketchup. A man is standing in a witness box in a courtroom. He is wearing a suit. He looks tired. He has been telling the court his life story in pieces for what feels like a long time. A lawyer asks him a question. The lawyer asks Henry to point out his old friend Jimmy Conway, the man he has been describing, the man he has known for almost 30 years. Henry looks up. He looks across the courtroom. He raises his hand and points. The camera moves slowly toward Robert De Niro's face. And then Henry stands up. He keeps talking, but he is not talking to the lawyer anymore. He is talking to us. He is looking directly into the camera. The courtroom around him goes quiet, frozen in the background. The walls behind him slide away. The boundary between the world of the film and the world of the audience just dissolved. For the entire movie, Henry's voice has been speaking to us from behind the picture. Now Henry is standing up, walking toward us, and finishing the story face to face. This is the most important moment of the ending, and most people who watch the film never quite register what just happened. The film has broken its own rules. For 2 hours and 20 minutes, Henry has been a character we are watching. In his last few minutes on screen, Henry becomes a man who has been telling us his story all along. The audience is not eavesdropping anymore. The audience is the one Henry is talking to. What he says, while looking at us, is the sentence that ends the movie. He says, "Today, everything is different. There's no action. I have to wait around like everyone else. Can't even get decent food. Right after I got here, I ordered some spaghetti with marinara sauce, and I got egg noodles and ketchup. Then, with something close to disgust on his face, he says, I'm an average nobody. I get to live the rest of my life like a schnook. Schnook is an old word. It means a small person, a nothing, a man who does not matter, a nobody. That is how the film ends Henry's voice. Not with a confession, not with regret, not with him admitting that what he did was wrong. He ends with a complaint about pasta. He ends by mourning the loss of marinara sauce. He ends by calling himself a schnook, which is what he has spent his entire life trying to never be. The movie is doing something very specific here, and it is the move that turns the whole story into a tragedy. Think about how almost every other gangster movie ends. The criminal gets shot. The criminal goes to prison for life. The criminal dies in a hail of bullets in the middle of the street. The criminal sits in a chair as the lights go out. There is a death. There is a punishment that fits the size of the life. The bigger the criminal, the bigger the ending. Tony Montana fires a grenade launcher and falls off a balcony. Michael Corleone watches a door close on him in a dark room while his wife realizes what he has become. Jimmy Cagney shouts at the top of the world before exploding in a fireball. Henry Hill walks out to the end of his driveway in a blue bathrobe to pick up the morning paper. There is no death. There is no hail of bullets. There is no prison cell. There is just a man in a bathrobe in a sunny suburb, looking around at a neighborhood full of people who go to work in offices, who mow their own lawns, who buy their own groceries, who have ordinary jobs and ordinary children and ordinary disappointments. Henry has joined them. Henry is one of them now. The Witness Protection Program has given him exactly what he asked for at the start of the movie, except in reverse. He always wanted to be somebody in a neighborhood full of nobodies. Now he is a nobody in a neighborhood full of nobodies. He has been served the life he spent 30 years escaping, and he hates it. That is the punishment. That is the ending. The film has decided that the worst thing it can do to Henry is not kill him. The worst thing it can do is let him live. Let him live in safety. Let him live with his wife and his kids. Let him live in a clean house with central heating. And let him stand in his bathrobe every morning, look at the sky, and know that nothing will ever feel the way the old life felt again. The egg noodles line is a joke on the surface. It plays for a small laugh. But underneath the joke, the line is doing terrible work. Henry is saying that he ordered something good and got something cheap. He is saying that he expected real food and got a sad imitation of real food. He is describing what has happened to his entire life. He used to eat real food. He used to live a real life. He used to be a real somebody. Now everything is a thin, watery copy of what it used to be. Even the spaghetti is fake. Even the sauce is wrong. That is the saddest sentence in the movie, and it is about pasta. Then comes the line itself. I get to live the rest of my life like a schnook. Listen carefully to the way the line is built. He says, I get to, as if it is a privilege, as if living the rest of his life like a nobody is something he has been allowed to do, like a guest at a party. The phrasing is horrible, because the phrasing reveals that Henry still does not see his old life clearly. He still thinks the gangster years were the real years. He still thinks the schnook years are the punishment, the leftover, the consolation prize. He has been given his life back, and he is mourning the version of himself that ended that life. This is what the entire opening of the film was pointing at. The freeze frame on Henry's face after the trunk killing. The voiceover saying, "I always wanted to be a gangster." The whole movie has been told to us by this man in the bathrobe, this man who is calling himself a schnook with bitterness in his voice. Every fond memory of the Copa, every laugh at Tommy's jokes, every warm moment with Polly, every thrill of the Lufthansa heist has been narrated by a man standing on a suburban lawn, missing all of it. The movie was a love letter all along, written by a man to a life that destroyed him. After Henry finishes talking, he turns around and walks into the small house behind him. He closes the door. The camera holds on the door for a second. Then a song starts. The song is My Way, the famous Frank Sinatra song. Most people associate that song with Sinatra's smooth, proud voice. The song is about a man at the end of his life, looking back and saying, "I have no regrets. I did everything my way. I was true to myself." The version Scorsese chose to play over the credits of Goodfellas is not Sinatra's. It is a cover by a punk singer named Sid Vicious. Sid Vicious was the bass player for the Sex Pistols. He was a young man who lived loud and fast and died of a drug overdose at 21 years old. His version of My Way is angry. It is rough. He yells the words. He sneers them. He is mocking the song while he is singing it. The smoothness of Sinatra is gone. What is left is a snarl. That is the song that closes Goodfellas. The choice is brutal. Sinatra's My Way is the song of a man who lived a real life on his own terms. Sid Vicious's My Way is the song of a man who burned out before he ever got the chance to. Henry Hill, in this ending, is somewhere in between. He thought he was Sinatra. He turns out to be Sid Vicious. He thought he was building a great life on his own terms. He turns out to have built a small life on borrowed time. The song is the joke and the verdict at the same time. There is one more shot before the credits start. A flash. Tommy DeVito appears, alive again, wearing the suit he wore in his early scenes. He raises a gun. He fires it directly into the camera. 3 times. Bang, bang, bang. Tommy has been dead for an hour of screen time. Tommy got shot in the head in an empty room a long time ago. The image at the end is not the real Tommy. It is a ghost. It is the memory of Tommy. It is the violence of the entire life Henry chose, returning at the very end to fire one last burst at the audience that has been watching all of this. That gunshot into the lens is a quote from one of the very first movies ever made, a short western from 1903 called The Great Train Robbery, which ends with a cowboy firing his gun into the camera. Scorsese knew that. He chose it on purpose. He was making a point about the entire history of the gangster movie. The genre started with a cowboy shooting at the audience. Goodfellas ends with a dead gangster shooting at the audience. The whole century of gangster films, every romance, every bullet, every man in a fedora, lives between those 2 shots. And Goodfellas is closing the loop. The bullets that the genre has been firing for 100 years are coming back to where they started. Henry survives. The movie ends. The credits roll. Sid Vicious snarls through My Way. Somewhere in a small house, in a small town, in a country that does not know his real name, a man stands in his kitchen in a bathrobe and waits for nothing in particular to happen. Some people, watching this ending for the first time, walk away thinking the film let Henry off easy. He lived. He kept his family. He stayed out of prison. The other guys got worse. Tommy died. Jimmy went to prison forever. Paulie went to prison forever. Henry got a house. Henry got a deal. Henry got egg noodles and ketchup. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The ending only feels easy if the comparison is to other gangsters. The comparison Scorsese is asking the audience to make is different. Scorsese is asking the audience to compare Henry's ending to the other most famous gangster film ever made. He is asking the audience to compare a man in a bathrobe to a man on a throne. Section 9. Why Goodfellas is not The Godfather, and why that's the whole point. Almost every conversation about Goodfellas, sooner or later, ends up being a conversation about The Godfather. It is unavoidable. The two films are the two most famous gangster movies ever made in America. They came out within 18 years of each other. They both deal with Italian-American crime families in New York. They both run almost 3 hours long. They both end with a man, broken in some way, standing in or near his home. Critics line them up side by side and tried to decide which one is greater. Roger Ebert went on record saying no finer film has ever been made about organized crime, not even The Godfather. Other critics have spent the last 35 years arguing back. The argument never really ends. Here is the truth that most of those comparisons miss. The two films are not really competing. They are doing two completely different things. They are aiming at two completely different feelings. They have two completely different ideas about what a gangster movie is even supposed to be. The Godfather is opera. Goodfellas is a home movie shot by a man with shaking hands. That sounds like a small distinction, but it changes everything about what kind of story each film is telling and why one of them is a tragedy and the other one is something else. Think about how The Godfather looks and sounds. Long, wide shots, slow camera moves, dim golden light pouring through curtains and windows, a score by Nino Rota that swells like a funeral mass, costumes that look like they belong in a museum, Marlon Brando talking in a hoarse whisper that sounds like a king from another century, Al Pacino's Michael Corleone going through a slow, tragic transformation from war hero to monster, played as if he is a Shakespeare character. Even the violence in The Godfather feels enormous. The killings are operatic. The famous baptism scene, where Michael becomes godfather to his nephew, while assassins he ordered murder his enemies all over the city, is intercut so carefully, set to such grand church music, that it feels like a religious ceremony. The whole film is dignified, stately, important. Coppola is making a film about a king, about a dynasty, about the slow corruption of a great house, the way a Greek tragedy or a Shakespeare play follows a great house from glory to ruin. The Corleones are not just a crime family in The Godfather. They are royalty. They sit at long tables. They live in compounds. They have rituals. They have honor codes. They have a mythology. That is the world Coppola built. And Coppola built it on purpose. He wanted a sweeping American epic. He got one. Now think about how Goodfellas looks and sounds. Camera that does not stop moving. Quick cuts. Bright daytime light, unflattering. The kind of light you actually see in a regular kitchen or a regular living room. Songs you grew up hearing on the radio. Dialogue that sounds like real people talking over each other at a real table. Real food being eaten. Real cigarettes being smoked. Curse words flying around constantly. The men wearing flashy clothes that are clearly cheap up close. The women wearing too much makeup. The houses decorated in late 70s bad taste with too much gold and too many mirrors. Nobody whispers in Goodfellas. Everybody yells, Everybody jokes. Everybody talks with their mouth full. The violence in Goodfellas is the opposite of the violence in The Godfather. There is nothing operatic about it. People do not get killed in carefully composed shots set to choir music. People get stabbed in the back of a car at a stoplight. People get shot in the foot at a card game. People get beaten to death with a pistol on the floor of a bar. People get found in pink Cadillacs with the windows steamed up. People get hung on meat hooks in the back of a delivery truck. The deaths are sudden, stupid, ugly, and small. They are deaths that nobody important is going to remember next week. This is the central contrast. This is why the two films are not really comparable in the way people try to compare them. They are not making the same kind of movie at all. Coppola, working from a novel by Mario Puzo, was telling a story about a fictional family. The Corleones never existed. The Godfather is a great American myth, built from scraps of real mob history, but shaped into something larger and grander than any single real family ever was. The film treats its characters with the dignity that fiction can give. They are heroes and villains in a grand sense. Their fall has weight because they were lifted up so high to begin with. Scorsese, working from a book by a real journalist named Nicholas Pileggi, was telling a story about a real man. Henry Hill was a person. He had a phone number. He gave interviews. He was alive when the movie came out. The other characters in the film are based on real people too. Jimmy Conway is based on a real man named Jimmy Burke. Tommy DeVito is based on a real man named Tommy DeSimone. Paulie Cicero is based on a real man named Paul Vario. Karen is based on a real woman named Karen Friedman Hill. The book Pileggi wrote is built almost entirely from interviews. Henry Hill, sitting with a journalist, telling stories about his life. The book is a real person's memory of a real life. Scorsese, when he made the film, kept that flavor. He kept the home movie feeling. He kept the sense that this is one man's account of his own days, told the way one man would actually tell it, full of small details, side stories, gossip about who slept with whom, complaints about food, jokes about other guys' clothes. The film is loose the way real memory is loose. The film is shaped like a person talking, not like a novel. That is why The Godfather feels carved out of marble and Goodfellas feels written on a napkin. They are doing different things on purpose. So when people argue that The Godfather is a greater tragedy because it is more dignified, more operatic, more grand, the argument is missing the move that Goodfellas is making. Goodfellas is a tragedy precisely because it refuses to dress itself up. Think about that for a second. The Godfather lifts its characters up so high that their fall is shocking. Goodfellas keeps its characters small on purpose so that their fall is sad in a different way. The men in Goodfellas are not kings losing their thrones. They are guys at a card table who never quite figured out that the table was rigged from the start. They were never going to be made men because of who they were and where they came from. They were never going to be remembered. They were never going to leave behind dynasties. They were going to get fat, get arrested, get killed, or get old. And that was always the only menu. The film is a tragedy because there was no version of this story where any of them ended up with what they thought they were going to end up with. There was no high to fall from. That is a harder kind of tragedy. That is the tragedy of small lives wasted in pursuit of a dream that was a lie from the beginning. The Godfather can break your heart by showing a great man become a small one. Goodfellas breaks your heart by showing small men who never got to be great in the first place, even though they spent their entire lives convinced they were on their way. Look at the endings side by side. The Godfather ends with a closed door. Michael Corleone has just lied to his wife. He has just had his enemies killed. He sits in his father's old chair as men come into the room, kiss his hand, and acknowledge him as the new Don. His wife, Kay, watches this from another room. The door closes between her and her husband. The closing of that door is one of the most famous shots in the history of cinema. It is a door closing on a marriage, on a soul, on any chance of redemption. It is final, heavy, absolute. Goodfellas ends with a man in a bathrobe complaining about pasta. Both endings are tragic. They are tragic in different ways. Michael's ending is the ending of a king who has lost his soul. Henry's ending is the ending of a foot soldier who never had much of a soul to begin with, or never knew where he had put it. Michael becomes a monster. Henry becomes a nobody. The film does not lift Henry up just to let him fall. It keeps him exactly where he was and lets the world around him quietly disappear, until the only thing left is the bathrobe and the egg noodles. Some critics, including Pauline Kael in her famous review of the film when it came out, argued that this is a flaw, that Goodfellas has no real arc, that it just stops, that without the operatic structure of a tragic fall, the movie is just a fast, exciting, shallow ride. That reading misses the move. The reason the movie has no operatic arc is that the lives it is depicting did not have operatic arcs. Real wise guys did not live like Michael Corleone. Real wise guys lived like Henry Hill. They were small-time men with big-time appetites, doing small-time jobs that occasionally got big, getting arrested over stupid things, dying in stupid ways, and ending up either underground or in a witness protection apartment somewhere, complaining about the food. The film is honoring the real shape of the real lives it is showing. It is refusing to make these men more important than they were. And the refusal is, itself, the tragedy. In a way, Scorsese is making a quieter, harder argument than Coppola made. Coppola is saying, look at how far a great man can fall. Scorsese is saying, look at how far these men thought they had risen, and look at how little they had actually built. The marble of The Godfather is replaced with the cheap gold and shag carpet of Goodfellas, and the music of a funeral mass is replaced with the snarl of Sid Vicious singing about regret over the credits. Both films are tragedies. They are just tragedies aimed at different-sized lives. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The trouble is that the audience, watching Goodfellas in the theater in 1990 and on television and DVD and streaming for the next 3.5 decades, did not always agree about which tragedy was being told. A lot of people watched Goodfellas and saw not a tragedy, but a fantasy. They saw the Copa shot and they wanted to be Henry. They saw Tommy at the dinner table and they wanted to be in the room. They saw the suits and the cars and the laughter, and they bought the surface. The film, made to seduce and then take that seduction apart, ran into a problem. The audience kept the seduction and threw the rest away. Section 10. The Glamour Misread. How a tragedy became a lifestyle brand, and what Scorsese got wrong about his audience. Goodfellas came out in September of 1990. It made a respectable amount of money. It was nominated for 6 Academy Awards. It won 1 for Joe Pesci. The reviews were strong, but not unanimous. A famous critic named Pauline Kael wrote a long, complicated review for The New Yorker, in which she praised the filmmaking, but worried about something she could not quite name. She titled her review, "Tumescence as Style." She wrote that the film made her feel something like uneasy pleasure. She noticed, in a way other reviewers did not, that the audiences she watched the film with were not just enjoying it. They were responding to it like a rock concert. Young men, in particular, were not watching Henry. They were leaning toward him. They wanted to be him. Cale wrote a sentence that would turn out to be the most important thing anybody said about the film in its first year. She said the audience did not just respond to Scorsese's films. They wanted to be him. They wanted to be inside the movie, not outside it. That sentence pointed at a problem the film was about to have for the next 35 years. Scorsese, in his own interviews about the film, was very clear about what he had been trying to do. He said in a number of conversations published right after the movie came out that he wanted to seduce the audience into the style of the film, into the music, into the rush of Henry's life. And then, having seduced them, he wanted to take them apart with it. He used the phrase, angry gesture. He wanted the film to be a kind of slap. The seduction was supposed to be the setup. The taking apart was supposed to be the point. The seduction worked. The taking apart did not, for a lot of people. Within a year of the film's release, Goodfellas was already starting to live a second life outside the movie itself. College dorm rooms had Goodfellas posters on the walls. Young men were quoting Tommy at parties. The opening line, "As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster," started showing up everywhere. T-shirts, jokes, imitations. The image of Henry, Jimmy, and Tommy standing together, three friends in long coats and dark suits, became one of the most reproduced images in American pop culture. People who could not name a single director hung that image on their walls. Real gangsters loved the film too. Stories started circulating, and have kept circulating, of actual mob members seeing Goodfellas in the theater and recognizing themselves in it, quoting it back at each other in real bars and clubs, treating the film like a tribute rather than a critique. The film was so accurate about how these men lived, ate, talked, and behaved, that the men themselves accepted it as their own. Then, in 1999, a writer named David Chase took everything he had absorbed from Goodfellas and turned it into a television show called The Sopranos. 27 actors who appeared in Goodfellas ended up appearing in The Sopranos at one point or another. Lorraine Bracco, who played Karen, ended up playing the therapist on The Sopranos. Michael Imperioli, who played Spider, the bartender Tommy shoots dead at the card table, ended up playing one of the main characters on The Sopranos. The genetic material of Goodfellas became the genetic material of the most influential television drama of the next 2 decades. The Sopranos changed what television could be, and The Sopranos was built, in large part, on what Scorsese had figured out in 1990. The line between celebration and tragedy got blurrier with every passing year. This is where the deepest tragedy of Goodfellas lives. It is a tragedy that lives outside the film itself. The film was a careful, painstaking 2.5-hour argument about what happens when a man chooses a life that hollows him out. The audience took the first hour of that argument, the seduction, and held on to it. The audience took the rush, the music, the table at the Copa, the wads of cash, the easy laughter, the sense of being inside a closed, warm world where everyone knew your name. The audience did not always take the rest. The audience, in some ways, became Henry. Henry, looking at the cab stand from his window as a boy, saw the surface of a life and decided he wanted it, without understanding what was underneath. The audience, looking at Goodfellas from the outside, saw the surface of a film and decided they wanted it. without always understanding what was underneath. Both made the same kind of mistake. Both fell in love with the wrapping and missed the box. Scorsese has spent the rest of his career trying to fix this. He has talked about it in interviews. He has made other films that try harder, sometimes more clearly, to point out the rot inside the seduction. The Wolf of Wall Street, which came out in 2013, ran into the same problem. Scorsese made a movie about a stockbroker who ruined hundreds of lives, and a large segment of the audience walked away thinking the stockbroker looked like a great guy to be. The Irishman, which came out in 2019, is sometimes read as Scorsese's quiet correction. It is a slow, sad 3.5-hour film about an old gangster who outlives everybody he loves and ends his life alone in a nursing home, asking a priest to leave the door open a little when he goes, because he is afraid of being alone in the dark. The Irishman has none of the rush of Goodfellas. There is no Copa shot. There are no big musical sequences. Scorsese seems to be saying, with that film, here is the real ending. Here is what I was trying to show you the first time. Here is the same story without the seduction. But the seduction of Goodfellas is real. It is built into every frame. You cannot make a film that good and ask people not to enjoy it. You cannot put a Steadicam through the back of a nightclub for 3 minutes set to a Crystals song and expect the viewer to walk away thinking, what a bad life. The pleasure of the film and the warning of the film are the same thing. They cannot be separated. The seduction is the trap. And once the trap has been set, people respond to traps the way people respond to traps. Some get caught. Some see the trap and walk around it. Some see the trap, see the bait, and decide the bait is worth the consequences. Henry himself, the real Henry, lived this exact pattern. After the events shown in the film, the real Henry Hill went into the witness protection program. He was given a new name. He was told over and over that his survival depended on staying quiet, blending in, becoming invisible. The whole point of the program was to turn him into a permanent schnook, the very thing the end of the film warns him becoming. The real Henry could not do it. He kept telling people who he was. He kept showing off. He kept committing small crimes in his new town. He used his new identity, the name the government had given him to keep him alive, to start running thefts again. He was thrown out of the witness protection program for being unable to stop being a wise guy. He spent the rest of his life giving interviews, appearing on radio shows, selling autographs, writing cookbooks, telling stories. He turned himself into a brand. He kept being Henry Hill long after Henry Hill was supposed to be a memory. He could not stop. The schnook complaint at the end of the film, the one about egg noodles and ketchup, was not just a movie ending. It was a description of the real man's real problem. He could not live without the life. He died in 2012, an old man, still telling stories about being a wise guy, still missing it, still calling himself one, even though the actual world he had been part of was long gone. The audience that put the poster on its wall, and the man whose life is on the poster, were doing the same thing in different ways. Both were holding on to a fantasy that had already been proven hollow. Both were unable to let go. That is the deepest tragedy of Goodfellas. The tragedy is not just inside the movie. The tragedy is the response to the movie. The tragedy is that Scorsese made a film designed to seduce and then reveal, and the world kept the seduction and skipped the reveal. The film became a love letter to the very life it was trying to mourn. The audience misread it the way Henry misread his own life. And in that misreading, The film proved itself right one more time, in a way Scorsese probably did not intend and could not control. If the message of Goodfellas was that this life looks beautiful from the outside and feels hollow from the inside, the response of the culture has been to keep looking at it from the outside, to stay at the level of the suit, the table, the song, the laugh, to never quite go down into the basement of the film and look at the bodies the rest of the story is built on. The film is still asking the audience to do that work. 35 years later, it is still asking. Every new generation that finds the movie has the same chance and the same trap that the first audience had. Watch the Copa shot and feel the warmth. Then, watch what the warmth costs. Watch Henry's voiceover at the start and feel the energy. Then watch his voiceover at the end and hear the cost in his voice. Watch the funny how scene and laugh. Then think about what you are laughing at and who taught you to laugh at it. And what happens to the man at the next table who did not laugh on time? The tragedy of Goodfellas is the tragedy of a man who chose a cage and called it a kingdom. The tragedy of how the movie has been remembered is that a lot of people, watching from outside the cage, are still looking in and thinking the kingdom is real. Henry stands in his bathrobe at the end of the movie and looks back at the camera one last time. He smirks. He shrugs. He picks up his newspaper. He turns. He walks back into his small house in his small town and closes the door behind him. The credits roll. Sid Vicious snarls through My Way. The screen goes black. And somewhere on the other side of that black screen, on the other side of all the years between then and now, the boy at the window in Brownsville, Brooklyn, is still watching the men double park in front of the fire hydrant. He is still making his choice. The choice is still understandable. The choice is still wrong. The film knows both things. The film has known both things from the very first frame. And the film is still waiting, after all this time, for the rest of us to catch up. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.